Good evening, everyone. Uh, a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us today online for this very important policy discussion. I'm Chaturika Hansamali from Department of Economics, and I'll be guiding our conversation today. At the moment, the world feels very uncertain right now, and the Middle East is once again facing major tensions. And for us in Sri Lanka, this is not just news from far away. These events directly and indirectly affect our economy. They affect the price of food, the safety of our workers abroad, and the strength of our rupee. So today we are going to discuss about the economic implications of Middle East geopolitical conflicts for Sri Lanka. Our goal is very simple. We want to understand what's happening sector by sector. We want to talk about the immediate problems, the risks for the future, and most importantly, what we can do about it. To help us do this, we have an excellent team of experts with us today. Let me introduce them now. Senior Professor S.V. Premaratne, who will talk about SMEs and industries. Professor Suranga Silva, our expert on the tourism industry. Professor Priyanka Dunusinghe, expert on the financial sector and banking. Dr. Ravindra Kumaran, who specializes in geopolitics, migration, and remittances. Dr. Roshni Jayavira, a macroeconomist and policy analyst. And also Mr. Joseph Francis, who will be focusing on energy and inflation. Finally, we have Mr. Chatula Nayanalochana, our expert on trade and logistics. Thank you all for being here online with us. Just a quick note on how this will work. We will have 3 rounds of discussion. In each round, I will ask a question and each panelist will have about 3 minutes to answer. I'll be keeping an eye on the time to make sure we cover everything. To begin, I would like to invite Senior Professor S.P. Premaratne to give us a short presentation to set the scene. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chaturika. This is some of the policy and the working paper series. This is going to be year 21. And our working papers, we have 3 types of working papers. With the PhD student, basically targeting literature review and their binding and some policy papers. So this series, I think the Department of Economics start sometime back 2005. Successfully, we are doing. To begin with this presentation, I give a short presentation, then I hand over to Chaturika for the round discussion. The background presentation I will do. The last week we had some progress review with the PhD student. One of the presentation PhD student did, the delay in taking actions by the government in different crises. Especially this particular PhD candidate focused on COVID and afterward economic crisis. So that delay cost so much, and so that is a very important, ultimately the kind of a government failure. This time also, I don't know whether in the round discussion we will see whether the government take action in delay, how much it cost, and what kind of a situation right now. With that, we face past few years, past few months, different type of shock within the country, domestic shock, and this type is quite external shock. So what we'll do, first we will look at this external shock, what we have the conflict in the Middle East, different channel is came to Sri Lanka. One of the main oil price and then inflation, because about 19% of the total import bill come from oil. And also that pressure come the balance of payment directly, current account balance in the 3 areas, mainly import cost increase, remittance, and the reduced export. And also remittance, also 80% come through the Middle East countries that also hugely affect Sri Lankan economy, and also disturbance of the supply chain and trade, logistic, that's also matter. The tourism is also another area, and the 81% of the tourists arrive through the Middle East hubs. That is really important. And also the expert will, like Chaturika already mentioned, the expert discuss with this macroeconomic implication in different angle, is very important: financial, tourism, industry, remittance, and the energy, and the logistic, and overall macroeconomic. This is what we use the data for this background information 2020 to 2025 and analyze. Based on this analysis, we found four scenarios. Basically, the baseline scenario. If you look at the baseline scenario, current situation, and the three other scenarios we developed, moderate, and right now we really based in the regional declaration, second scenario, and the third scenario. If we look at the first scenario, the economic growth slow down up to 4%, inflation increase 4.2, the exchange rate will reach 318 at the current account. Now, the current right now situation is a second scenario kind of thing. Economic growth will slow down up to 3.2, and the inflation increase 6.5, and the exchange rate will go 335. The severe war situation if it goes, and in case of oil price increase up to 130, and so the tourism also decline. That is the worst case, and the growth rate will slow down 2.3, and the inflation increase 9, and the exchange rate reach 360 average, but the worst case, the calculation even go higher. With that, also the best policy option also we measure. When you talk about the policy option, so it's not single policy, it has to be the mixed policy with the combination of monetary, fiscal, and the sectorial policy. The best policy option is to reach the optimal outcome in this situation if government use economic growth between 3.5 to 4.2. Our calculation inflation reach 6.5 to 7, and the exchange rate will reach up to 335, and the current account balance minus 32. So this the policies, interest rate, VAT reduction, and the government expenditure increase, and these areas the policy. The worst scenario of government no action, delay responses, and no foreign exchange management, and the worst case, our calculation, the economic growth will reach the lowest 1.5, the inflation increase up to 12%, and the foreign exchange dollar reach depreciation 390 up to. This is the worst scenario. What are the policy mainly target? No single policy instrument sufficient to mitigate the macroeconomic impact. So we have to look at the policy mix, the balanced policy mix, combination of monetary, fiscal, and the external sector stabilization sectorial policies. Policies that extend mainly foreign exchange. The central bank has to look at the remittance and export earning increasement. That is the key area rather than domestic demand management and the supply side. If the supply side policies issue is in the mainly domestic production, mainly based on import milk, especially oil and the other import. Now, the problem is the failure to implement the coordinated policies. If you isolate policy, monetary separately, central bank, fiscal policy separately, others, industry like separately, it doesn't work. Then the result is severe macroeconomic instability, high inflation, like we predicted, worst cases it will reach. With that, the strategies government had to do within this policy, different innovative strategies going for maybe the short run, the long run, and the medium term. One of my mainly government has to look at, country has to look at innovative driven economy, innovative kind of a production. Yeah. And also looking at the alternative, especially the energy micro level projects rather than even the going with the macro project. So with that, I would like to hand over to Chatrika again to panel discussion. This panel discussion had 3 rounds. The first, try to understand the implication through the channel each sector. Second round will go the opportunities and risk and the analysis. Third round, the experts will discuss the particular areas, policy responses. With that, this I would like to take the Chaturika, the leads right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That was a very helpful overview. Now I would like to invite Professor Amithalingam, Head of the Department of Economics, University of Colombo, to share some opening thoughts. Sir, please go ahead. After that, we can move
Thank
to
you.
policy
Thank you,
discussion.
Shatrika. I feel that this is very good initiative, and we are facing very difficult situation, not only Sri Lanka, entire world, I can say entire world, because particularly Asia, Africa, Europe, these 3 regions are facing severe difficulties due to fuel price increase, gas price increase. So we are getting towards huge inflation impact. Not only these fossil fuel related issues, and fertilizer also coming through the Hormuz Strait. So fertilizers price also will be soaring very soon. So the uncertainty is imminent now. So I feel that this policy discussion is relevant, particularly for Sri Lanka and the region, South Asian region. We have eminent panels here. So I think that we can continue the discussion, then we can discuss further. Good luck to everybody. Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Now let's move to our first round, where we look at the immediate impacts. In the first round, the question for everyone is, from your specific area of expertise, what is the most immediate impact of this Middle East conflict on Sri Lankan economy? And how is that impact reaching us? What is the main channel? Let's keep answers to about 3 minutes. Professor Priyanka Dunusinghe, let's start with you. From a banking and financial sector view, what is the first thing you're worried about? So it's over to you.
Okay, thank you for the invitation. In the context of financial sector and banking, immediate impact will be on the liquidity in the banking and financial sector, given the flow of remittance and the flow of tourist income and even the FDI. When such flows come down, the liquidity will be in the sector will be affected along with the earnings of the banking sector, profitability and so on and so forth. And also, given the interest expectation remain high, it is the possibility is very high interest rates to go up, and in particular the government treasury bills and the bond related rates to go up in the very short run. And also given the businesses are affected, the risk of default also remain high, even though NPL, non-performing loan rates have come down in recent month. Possibility is high given that output decline will have impact on businesses, and thereby having the possibility of non-performing loan rates to go up. And finally, possibilities that the finance need for financing imports bill will climb, so that also will have a impact pressure on the banking sector, even if the banking and financial sector remain healthy after the crisis. It is highly possible that the global level inflation, and in particular in the context of Sri Lanka, the flow of foreign exchange will come down due to reduction in exports, remittance, tourism, and other related areas. So the earnings and the liquidity will be a problematic area in the banking sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now let's move on to Professor Suranga Silva. As we all know, tourism is often the first sector to feel global shocks. Sir, what are you seeing on the ground?
Okay, Chandrika, thank you very much for your the providing me this opportunity. I'm very, very happy to make some important comments on this particular things. As we know that tourism industry has become the most challenging industry for last 2-3 decades in Sri Lanka. We had to face COVID pandemic, Easter Sunday attack, then economic crisis. Actually, the 2025 is the most important year for Sri Lanka tourism. It has dramatically increased and made the Sri Lanka record the highest number of tourist arrivals in Sri Lanka. But unfortunately, it is this war situation has created fundamental problems as the movement of airline industry through the Gulf and Middle East has been challenged. So therefore, Sri Lanka as island destinations, we have to experience sharp decline of tourist arrival. Now we have realized that around 30% of tourist arrival decline because of this war situations. On the other hand, we can see that tourism industry is now picking up and taking back to the rekindling their positions. But unfortunately, now industry has done some investment, huge investment, and hotels were ready to accept large number of tourists, and the government has spent a lot of money to make them conducive environment for them to come and enjoy their life as a tourist. Now we can see that the most of popular destinations are empty of tourist arrivals. Now, example, LA is one of the very popular destinations. Now you can see last week, last day, I think 2-3 days before, the tourism operators and the stakeholders are telling that now tourists are not seen in the destinations. This is same for other destinations as well. This is a very badly effect for tourism industry. I think we have to redesign our policies and the market allocation or market diversification is very important. But we are very positive, and Sri Lanka tourism will be coming back within few months. I can discuss about the next session, and if you need to more clarifications on how we come back as an industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable insights. Our next panelist is Dr. Ravindra Kumaran. Sir, this is about people. For our migrant workers and the money they send home, what is the immediate impact you are seeing or worried about in this context?
Okay, Chatrika, as I have discussed three major areas, can I share my slides, please?
Sure, sir.
Mm, Is it okay? Am I with you? So is it? I can't share my slides.
So I think you are a
Can you give me a?
co-host. You
You
can
had to give me
share.
a. Yes.
Yes, sir.
So no, still I'm waiting for that. Hmm.
So can you
Is it
please
okay?
try again?
No, I still I couldn't see that.
Ah,
Anyway, I think there may be some issue, isn't it? Okay, anyway. So thank you very much, Satrika, and also I really I sincere appreciation to Professor Premaratna for inviting me to participate as a panelist of this particular timely and important discussion. So, from the perspective of geopolitics, labor migration, and remittance inflows, the recent Middle East tension generate immediate economic impact on Sri Lanka through three major channels. When you look at the first one is a geopolitical channel, this is basically focusing on the energy and trade shock. The most immediate impact is through global oil price volatility. Sri Lanka is highly dependent on imported fuel, and any disruption in the Middle East leads to rising energy cost. So higher oil prices increase import expenditure and inflation. And of course, the transport, electricity, and production costs rise across sectors. And then pressure build on the balance of payment and exchange rate. So when you look at the main transmission channel, global oil market leads to import cost and leads to inflation and also external sector pressure. And when move on the second labor migration channel, we know that labor migration remains a key livelihood strategy for Sri Lanka. More than 300 workers leaving annually for foreign employment in recent years. So Sri Lanka sent a large share of its migrant workers to Middle East. So when this particular conflict, we easily we can identify or observe that job opportunities may decline due to economic slowdown in host countries, particularly in Sri Lanka, and worker safety risk and possible repatriation increase definitely, and then new migration flow may be disturbed. So when you look at the implication, any geopolitical disruption in the Middle East can directly affect employment opportunities, the worker safety, and migration flows. So creating socio-economic risk at home. And when you look at the third channel, which is a remittance channel, particularly is relevant to foreign exchange shock. So there are three different shocks. The first one I clearly mentioned, energy and trade shock. The second one is employment risk, and the last one is a foreign exchange shock. So, as we know, that remittances are one of the Sri Lanka's most vital sources of foreign exchange and macroeconomic stability. Sri Lanka recorded a historical high about 7.8 to 8.1 billion remittance every year. Remittances increase by around 19% every year. About 80% of remittances, I think Professor Premaratna clearly mentioned that coming from the Middle East. So when you look at the remittances play a crucial role supporting foreign reserves, stabilizing the exchange rate, and also reducing poverty and supporting household consumption. When you look at the implication, any conflict in the Middle East could disrupt remittance flows, weakening Sri Lanka's foreign exchange position, and also economic recovery. So overall, the Middle East conflict affects Sri Lanka through a triple shock mechanism: energy prices, migration flows, and remittance inflows, making it a highly vulnerable external sector issue. These interconnected channels amplify economic uncertainty and pose serious challenges to Sri Lanka's ongoing recovery process. Thank you. We'll meet in the second round. Thank you, Chatrika.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Roshini, as a macroeconomist, how do these immediate shocks translate to the overall economy, and what's the big picture impact?
Thank you, Chaturika, and hope you can hear me. So thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. So my task is in this panel discussion, my task is to explain the impact of this Middle East tension on Sri Lankan economy as a macroeconomic impact. So when we talk about the macroeconomic impact, actually I need to talk about the all the sources which that tension is coming to Sri Lanka. So then international trade, remittances, tourism, and also foreign reserves and exchange rate are the main sources. And as my other speakers are talking about those things, so I will focus mainly on the local production, investment, and also foreign reserves and exchange rate, and fiscal burden on the Sri Lankan government. So those are the things which I selected to talk about the macroeconomic impact especially. So as Professor Premaratna and other speakers clearly mentioned, because of this oil price hike, our import bill will be increasing, because when we talk about the breakdown of our imports, actually we consider oil as an intermediate product, and the main cost is going to the fuel import. With that oil price hike and also the delays in importing oil, it will directly affect on our production sector. Then the cost of the production will increase, and also the production process might be very slow because of the input provision is very slow. So then when we talk about the production, actually that is not only the industrial sector. As someone mentioned earlier, the fertilizer is also affected. Therefore, the industrial production as well as the agriculture production will be negatively affected because of this Middle East tension. Therefore, when the production process is slowed down, it will affect on the unemployment. I mean, the short-run unemployment in the country, and thereby it will affect on the income, real income, and also poverty level in the country. So these effects, I mean, the magnitude of this effect will depend on how long this tension will continue. And again, when we talk about the import bill, this high import bill will increase higher demand for the foreign exchange. That again will affect the foreign exchange rate and also the foreign reserves in the country. On the other hand, not only the demand for foreign exchange will increase, and the supply of the foreign exchange will be lower. Why? Because our export income might be lower, because there might be a lower demand for exports due to this crisis, because the entire world is affected. And if I go to the investment level, I think that that source is long run. Because of this tension in the Middle East, the investment attitudes towards the risk taking, it might be risk aversion. Therefore, the foreign direct investment coming into the country might be very low during this particular time, and also access to foreign capital will be a difficult task for Sri Lanka, and also sometimes we can see capital outflow will happen in the country. And when I come to the government, actually the government revenue will be lower in the future if this situation is continuing. Why? Because the tax income or the tax revenue will be lower due to the lower economic activities in the country. Therefore, the government has to bear a fiscal burden. Not only that, on the other hand, the government expenditure will be increased. Why? Because as I mentioned earlier, because of this unemployment and also the poverty level, in addition to that, the production sector, some of the production producers, they need fuel subsidies and also the poor people, they need social protection. So the government has to increase the government expenditure on these subsidies and the safety nets. Therefore, the fiscal policy or the fiscal burden will be created in the countries. So I again mentioned the magnitude of this effect will depend on how long the situation will continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable insights. Next, let's hear from Mr. Joseph Francis. Sir, you are looking at energy and inflation. What is the main transmission channel for you? Is it oil prices directly? We need your ideas as well.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chaturika, for the introduction and for raising very important question. So it's my great pleasure to participate in this panel discussion on a timely issue that is already affecting all of us. So from my perspective as a energy and inflation, basically Sri Lanka is highly energy dependent economy. So we depend heavily on imported fuel for transportation, electricity generation, and overall economic activity. At the same time, the Middle East is a key supplier of oil to the global market. So when there is a geopolitical tension in that region, it creates uncertainty in supply and global oil prices tend to increase. So as a result, we are already seeing rising oil prices in globally, and we are facing in our current situation also. So according to your question, now if we look at how this affects Sri Lanka, first there is an external shock. So this external shocks increasing the global oil prices. Second, Sri Lanka has spent more on fuel imports. So this means we need more US dollars to buy fuel. At the same time, this can affect the exchange rate and the rupee may depreciate. So when that depends on not only the fuel, but other imported item also become more costly. So another way to we think about the fuel is a key input in almost every sector, such as agriculture, industry, and services. So when the fuel prices increases, the transportation, electricity, and production cost go up. So this is in economic terms what we call in costful inflation. So even though inflation, we compare in the last year and this year inflation, the relatively inflation is recent month is low. So these type of external shocks can increasing inflation again. So especially if the conflict is continuous, the Middle East war is continuous, so this could be slow down for Sri Lankan economy recovery. So anyway, energy and inflation perspective. So if the conflict is short term, the impact may be manageable. But if continues, it creates serious challenge for the Sri Lankan economy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Finally, we have Mr. Chatula Nayanalochana. Chatula, for trade and logistics, what would be the immediate problem? What do you think about shipping cost and delays?
Thank you, Chatrika, for giving me the opportunity. So basically, what we do believe is that trade is the engine of growth. So to happen trade, we all know that the logistics is key. In this logistics, without transportation, you would not be able to have international trade. So basically, why we feel like Gulf crisis as a world crisis. So the voice there in Gulf, but we feel that as a world crisis because the Gulf crisis has hit the heart of an economy, that is the energy. So basically, that is due to the asymmetric warfare what we are seeing in the region. In this asymmetric warfare, what we see is two unbalanced parties are fighting each other. So one party needs a bargaining power. So Iran is basically finding a bargaining power by giving economic stress and shutting down the energy supply throughout the world. So basically, as a result of that, we do believe that is has affected the production in the economy as well as transportation in the economy. And one thing in maritime economics, we consider there are three choke points when it comes to international trade. So one is Malacca Strait, and the other one is Hormuz Strait, and the other one is Bab el Mandab Strait. So basically, this war is happening in two of the main important straits. One is Hormuz, and other one is Bab el Mandab. So basically, the Hormuz, due to the closure of Hormuz, the oil transportation or the energy transportation is affected, and due to the closure of the Bab el Mandab Strait, the goods transportation is affected. So basically, the countries which are depending on international trade now has a problem. That is because due to this fact, the trade has been affected. So in Sri Lanka also, what we see is in future the trade will be affected, and currently due to the energy price, the rise of energy price, and due to the lack of supply of energy, that we know that the transportation sector is affected. With the transportation sector is struggling, so we know that the logistics will fail. When the logistics fail, we would not be able to have the trade. So the initial impact or the main impact from this Gulf crisis to the national economy is that we are unable to engage in international trade due to the problems created by the energy crisis and due to the problem created by the lack of transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chatula. We had a very good first round, and thanks again for all of you. Now let's look a little ahead. In round two, I want to talk about the medium-term risks and also any possible opportunities we are thinking about the next 1 to 3 years. First of all, I would like to move on to Senior Professor S.P. Premaratne. Sir, we need your insights and your thoughts, especially regarding SMEs and industry sector.
Let me the first round things also, because I give the background information overall. The XME sector, first we have to look at the including industry in Sri Lanka. The mainly depends on imported materials and energy. Around without labor, around a 90% imported. That is the really negatively affect the SME sector, and the XME sector is the key in Sri Lanka and industries. Channel, if you look at, before I talk about the risk and the opportunities, and channel, the energy definitely, because all the production costs mainly depend on energy cost in Sri Lanka, high energy cost right now also, that is there. And also trade supply channel also disturb SME sector and the industry, because if someone even the engage in export directly affect, even the domestic production, domestic producers also affect, because the importations block with this and energy block. And also exchange rate channel also, because the foreign exchange pressure increase the imported inputs that affect the SME sector, their cost of production. Finally, that financial sector also risk getting the interest rate increase, and SME lending also, because the bank first cut the SMEs and micro business lending. So that also the effect. And also the external demand channel. The Sri Lanka export to few not necessary goods, because the global market, other countries first cut the unnecessary things, then directly affect to that. If you look at the risk factors and the second round, I start, the highly risky, like imported oil, that risky the export sector. Like I mentioned, imported items except labor over 90%, that is directly risk area, the SME and the industrial sector there. And the export market concentration also. We usually import from the Eastern, Chinese, Indian, and the Japanese, but they export to the Europe and the America, USA. So this conflict, definitely, if we have PV export, is directly affect the export also, SMEs and industry. The tourism arrival also matter, SMEs and industries, because in Sri Lanka, especially SMEs, mainly now entrepreneurs and businesses focus tourism related activities. When the tourism arrival goes down, that is also negatively affect to the SME sector. And the being financial resilience, like I mentioned, limited savings, and because the SME sector, our policies and years to years try to depend on government. Government always try to subsidize. That dependency, they don't have a financial resilience. They don't keep their savings, insurance, and other financial resilience method. But still, the SMEs and industries, local industries, have some opportunities. Like you asked, mainly the trade diversification. Now, this kind of disturbance, there are some vacant market, mixed market, domestic and also the other market. So the SME sector, if they are wise, they can think of this direction, and the future will be better. And the logistic and the regional hub, this may be the other countries we think of, rather Gulf, and looking at the port hub, that may be the Colombo and the Sri Lanka and the basin. Now the government can use SMEs to develop, for example, like Rotterdam port. SMEs can be used for that development. That is also a good opportunity. And also tourism shift, because the strategies, tourism sector, I think Professor Ranga will talk about more, then maybe concentrate rather just to visit, maybe the health related, education related tourism, that may be more wonderful, more strong. And also the acceleration and need SME sector, maybe SME sector can think of this kind of So innovative, like I previously also tried to present, innovative product rather than conventional product. So with that also another opportunities we have to think of SMEs and industrial sector. So with that, I will stop this point. Thank you very much, Katrika.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable ideas. Moving on to Professor Suranga. Sir, sometimes, as we all know, when one region is unstable, tourists normally look for safer places. Could Sri Lanka benefit from that as well? Or will people just stop traveling altogether?
Actually, Chaturika, thank you very much for opening that particular point. I think Senior Professor Premaratna also highlighted very important point about tourism and SME sector. I would like to start from there. Actually, when you look at the tourism sector, we know that the majority of tourism operators are from SME sector. Therefore, the SME sector is severely vulnerable because of these situations. Basically, the government has estimated right now we have lost more than 30% of tourist arrival from the Middle East, and we usually generate 500,000 US dollars per day as a tourism income. It is now challenged. In addition, more than 750 flights have been cancelled. Altogether, we can see that tourism industry is still this time also facing a very severe situations. But fortunately, tourism industry, though it is affected badly and a crisis, it is the industry bouncing back very fast than the other industries. So when you look at what you have pointed out, yes, we have actually realized that our tourism industry is more centered on Western tourism. More than 57% of tourists are coming from Western countries. So now Western countries tourist arrival have been blocked right now because of most of the tourists are coming through Dubai. So therefore now we have two options. One is immediate stabilization of tourism. We have to look at the visa flexibility. Now Sri Lanka, we now facing a certain number of tourists are actually staying in Sri Lanka without going their countries. So therefore they are stranded. So therefore now country has done a very important thing. They have been given the free 14 days visa, and it will be extended further. At the same time, on the other hand, the tourists are coming, better we actually encourage them to come to Sri Lanka through free visa facilities. Then I would like to see the most important part, what Chaturika has clearly mentioned, that we have to restructure the aviations, and we have to reroute in the existing capacity. Now, example, most of tourists are coming through the Middle East, but we would like to see how we can reroute them into the different way. Example, if they go to the other part of the world, they can come to Sri Lanka, actually evading the situation of the dangerous situation when they are coming through Middle East. Therefore, Gulf-free connectivity is very important. Now, government is thinking that how we can create the Korean Air, Cathay Pacific, Thai Airways, and coming through different aviation routes. As you said, the source, very important point is the source market diversification. Therefore, we would like to see, right, this is a golden opportunity for Sri Lanka because of two reasons. Even the disasters is happening. Now, you know that Dubai is a very popular destination for tourists to visit. Now, Sri Lanka can capitalize this opportunity because Dubai will not be safe place again forever, because sometime this war it will stop again and it will come back because of the situation. Therefore, Dubai is not safer than earlier, and Sri Lanka would be very important point. Now, Sri Lanka has shown the world that we have a great humility through the protecting the Iranian armed forces, not Navy personnel, and sending their bodies to Iran. So therefore, there is some positive sign for Sri Lanka if we want to promote Sri Lanka tourism. For other countries also, Sri Lanka could be considered one of the best nations. And the second thing is source market, we can diversify. Now we should look at the most dominant market in the world. As you know that more than 286 millions of people are coming out from China as outbound tourists. And Indian around 100 million tourists are going as outbound tourists. India, China, Russia, and South Asian countries, including the Asia Pacific. And I think this is the best time we can dive to some source market into these areas. Because when you look at the per day per tourist spending, China is the highest. So therefore, Russian also doing good. So now it is time for us to diversify the tourism industry. More Eastern Europeans and American as well as China, East Asian emerging buffer for tourism development. So rather than this East, we should not be so negatives, and we have to think about the potential opportunities we can capitalize through this kind of situation. I think product resilience and revenue quality improvement is very important. Niche market diversification, as Professor Premara said, we can think about different kind of product diversification. Example, wellness, MICE, kind of tourism, eco-tourism, culture tourism. I think if we can rightly tap this opportunity, we can be better positions in future, because the most of the giant of global tourism has been affected because of this Middle East war. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Joseph, looking at the energy sector over the next couple of years, what are the biggest risks? And is there any chance which creates an opportunity for us, maybe in alternative energy?
Thank you for the question, Chaturika. Looking at the medium-term impact, so this situation highlights several structural vulnerabilities in Sri Lanka economy. So based on your question, so first we look at one of the most important vulnerabilities, our high dependence on imported energy. Sri Lanka depends heavily on fuel from other countries. So when global energy prices remaining high, it directly affect our economic stability. So basically, our economy is very sensitive to change the global energy prices. So energy prices stay high for longer period. If may face ongoing inflation, this means the cost of living will continuously increase. So that the things, the reducing the purchasing power for household. So based on your question, in the key vulnerabilities is external competitiveness. So the higher energy cost increase the cost of production, so making Sri Lanka export less competitive in the global market. So now I come to your point, your question registered in the any other opportunities or any other chances for Sri Lanka reduce this cost. So another way to we critically think about the clear vulnerabilities in the situations create opportunities. First is provide a strong reason to invest more renewable energy such as solar and wind power. So basically these days Sri Lanka has good potential in this area, especially with the solar system, and this can improve in the long-term energy security. And second, the firm may starting using the energy saving technology, so which can reduce the cost and improve the productivity in the overtime. So in the medium term, the main vulnerabilities come from the high energy depends in the rising cost in ongoing inflation and reduce the competitiveness. So anyway, your point of view in the important opportunities to promote the renewable energy, so improve efficiency and strengthen the long-term economic resilience. So therefore, Sri Lanka must act now by reducing its vulnerabilities and actively investing in sustainable energy solution to ensure stable and resilient future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to Mr. Chattula Nayanalochana. Chattula, for trade, as global shipping routes change, could this be an opportunity for Sri Lanka as a logistic hub, or do the risk of higher cost outweigh that?
Thank you, Chatrika. That's a good question. So basically what we see now, right now, is the shipping freight, or the what we call the price of transporting via ships has increased. Basically due to two things. One is the rise of bunker prices. That means the fuel that we are using for ships, that has been increased by 67%. And the other one is the increase in the insurance cost, because now the shipping companies charge a war risk premium on top of the freight. So basically, the shipping freight from China to Sri Lanka that has been increased from 50%, and from Sri Lanka to Rotterdam that has been increased from 47%, and from Sri Lanka to New York that has been increased from 23%. So basically, why I choose Rotterdam and China both? In our country, the context is like our imports are coming from basically from China, and we do a kind of a value addition, and we export that to either to the Europe market or to the American market. So basically, what we see in this context is that the shipping cost related to both imports and exports has increased. So basically, that is kind of a threat or a risk to the Sri Lankan exports, which we need to focus on. So since Sri Lanka, since we don't have any other option, we need to cater that problem. We need to consider that problem, and in order to be more competitive in the market, what we can do is we need to reduce the inefficiencies existing in the production system. So basically, that we can reduce that. We can give a try to reduce the impact from the increased freight cost. Apart from that, on the other hand, when it comes to opportunities, currently in the short run, we have several opportunities which we can use to cater what is happening in the Middle East. So basically, what we know that now, due to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, we see that a lot of ships are in layup. So because the layup in the sense that is ships are in the ideal condition without sailing. So that is a cost for the shipping company. So if we can give a safe harbor, especially in Trincomalee or in Colombo, that will be additional advantage to earn foreign exchange to our country. And since we don't know the ending date of the war, the most of the shipping companies at this moment will go for cold layups. In the cold layups, in the sense that is the most of the companies will go for long idle stays. So basically, providing services to those kind of ships either in Colombo or Trincomalee will give additional foreign exchange to the market. So in the short run, the best solution for us to cater what is happening in the Middle East is that to provide new services to the ships which we are giving, and the rising cost from the other hand is a risk for our exports in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chatura. Moving on to Dr. Ravindra Kumaran. Sir, in the medium term, could Sri Lankan workers find new markets, or are we facing a long-term drop in remittances?
Is it okay? Can you see the slides?
Yes,
Clear?
sir, we can see.
Okay, that's clearly pointed out. Actually, I have clearly mentioned that there are three major channels. So over the medium term, the Middle East conflict does not only create a short-term shock, but also structural risk and also potential opportunities for Sri Lanka. Basically, you can see the three different channels. So when you look at the geographical channel, so this is clearly explained what are the adjustments need in terms of energy and trade. Particularly, you can see I have highlighted here three major risks. Particularly, when you look at the continue these oil prices, okay, it may be possible to create some chronic inflation and also higher production costs. It may be create another level. Particularly, kind of like Sri Lanka, we have very high import bill. As a result, not only Sri Lanka, many other developing countries, they have a very large amount of trade deficit. So, as a result of that, what we can expect another major area, particularly we can see in Sri Lanka, major export in tea. I feel that 52% of tea export only for the Middle East country. As a result of this conflict, what we can observe, there may be some demand volatility for one of our major export items. So these are the major risks we can observe from the geopolitical channel. But in the meantime, the government need to be consider some of the major area. There are certain opportunities need to be, identified. Particularly, we know that incentive to diversify energy sources. I think already some of our presenters clearly mentioned that we need to check whether what are the renewable energies available and how we can move from the energy sources suitable for the country like Sri Lanka. In the meantime, if we rely on only one or two export market, we have to think about how we can diversify our export market other than the Middle East, because rather than rely on one region or one country, it is necessary to check whether what are the opportunities available other than the region. And further, we need to check whether how we can efficiently use our energy, and also need some reforms in terms of this, energy and also trade. These are major area what I focus on the geopolitical channel. And when you move the labor migration channel, this is particularly what I expect. There need to be change some employment dynamics. Particularly what I found some of the risk here, particularly after this conflict affected economies, but we observe there may be demand for foreign workers. So as a result, after a certain point, we know that most of the developing countries, they lost their migrant workers demand from Middle East countries. So this is one of the major threat for this country like Sri Lanka. And not only that, there may be some job insecurity and also the wage suppressions. So that is basically for the migrant workers. And the third major risk, we can observe the domestic unemployment pressure, because after returning the migrant workers, it's very pressure of the employment opportunities in the country like Sri Lanka. That's also one of the risks we can expect after a certain point. So in order to avoid this kind of risk, I may be possible to provide some kind of opportunities. Government need to be consider how they can diversify this migration destination other than in the Middle East. They have to think about opportunity from East Asia or any other Europe country. That may be the good opportunities. And also need to provide some skill development. So because we know that the most of the migrant workers are low level skill, so we have to check whether how we can improve higher value foreign employment, because we had to provide very high skill techniques for the workers. Then easy to find job opportunities other than the Middle East country. And also we know that we need to make some labor agreement, bilateral agreement among the countries, and also in order to maintain the workers' protection. So when you look at the third one, which is remittance channel, particularly what I can suggest need to be checked whether how we can maintain the external stability and also household welfare. These are the two major area we need to be considered when we talk about the remittance channel. So what are the risks I identify? The first one is the foreign reserves. Of course, we know that many presenters clearly mentioned that because of this spillover or unsustainable remittance, definitely it reduce the foreign reserves, because the migrants or remittance are one of the major area for increase the foreign reserve. As a result of this conflict, we know that gradually the declining the foreign reserve. And again, not only that, we can observe what will happen in the exchange rate. So definitely there may be some volatility due to this, reduced dollar inflows. And other than that, we can see what happened in the rural area, particularly in Sri Lanka, after declining the household consumption. So especially in the rural area, many people lost their employment, therefore they cannot continue their day-to-day life. So in that particular case, what I can provide some opportunity, government need to be consider formalization of the remittance channels. That's several times, and the policymakers clearly mentioned that need to be checked how these remittance channels need to be authorized, particularly the banking sector and digital transfers. So definitely we have to improve, and also need to provide some policies in order to implement some incentives remittances, particularly better exchange rate and also diaspora bonds. This is one of the major area many people discuss, but still a government reluctant to go for similar kind of strategies. And other than that, the productive use of remittances for investment rather than, so particularly we know that most of the remittance we are using for the consumption purpose. So in the future, what we have to think about how we can use these remittances for our investment purpose. Those are the major area of what we can consider for the future. So therefore, what I can suggest here in the medium term, these channels highlight a critical transition. Particularly, Sri Lanka must move from external vulnerability to strategic adaptation by diversifying energy sources, expanding labor market, and also strengthening remittance system. These are major opportunities available. Government need to be considered clearly. There may be some opportunity, but still we know that we are struggling to implement some of the policy strategy. That's what Professor Premaratne clearly mentioned, that the delay is always create more danger, more vulnerability in our economy. Thank you very much, and we'll meet the third round.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to Professor Dunusinghe. Sir, from a banking point of view, if remittances fall and the rupee stays weak, what would be the medium-term risks to our banks and financial stability?
Okay, thank you. Before I come into, I answer your questions, I think most of our speakers mentioned, if I summarize it more broadly, what we can see with this crisis, our macroeconomic stability at risk. I think many highlighted the inflation, balance of payment, fiscal burden, reserve, so on and so forth. Then the economic recovery and growth also at risk. Also the development in terms of poverty and unemployment at risk. Then the social unrest is something which we could expect at risk as well. When it comes to the banking sector, as I earlier mentioned, that liquidity and the default, liquidity level come down, and the default, it is possible default to increase. I think in that context it is important to open up debt restructuring. I mean debt restructuring in the banking sector, debt restructuring. So to maybe open up a window for businesses to come and discuss with the banks, in particular the tourism sector related business, export and import related businesses, as well as the medium and small and medium scale businesses, to come and initiate a dialogue with the banking sector to avoid, from one side the financial sector stability point of view, it is important, and on the other hand it is important from the government and the business point of view as well. Then the next one is, it is also important to go for these price adjustments as soon as possible. On a stage-wise price adjustment is very important. Now, keeping right now oil remain at $115, that mean roughly per liter more than 400 rupees per liter. Now we stand at around 310. So that means better we increase the oil prices, maybe another one step, maybe by 50 to 60 rupees per liter. This is almost similar to the situation where during the 2022 crisis you kept the exchange rate fixed. So similarly, if you keep the oil prices, electricity prices fixed, that is, that basically have a negative impact in terms of we don't reduce the consumption. It is very important that we reduce the consumption of electricity and oil, and in that respect price play a key role. True that price will have a negative impact on certain segment. In that case, government must use the buffers, fiscal buffers, to finance provide some subsidies or income support to them, rather than for buying oil. Good to provide supports for consumption related activities so as to keep them above the poverty line. So it is very important to think in that way. And also very important other dimension is that we need to, I think, promote more work from home, and even the shopping from home. Maybe take around 20% of the economic activities online is very important at this moment to prevent financial burden, because we know that the risk is very high, interest rates to go up. So it is applicable for new loans as well as the loan already obtained. So in that, because with the remittance flow, exports in then the tourism come down, then the banking sector profitability will be affected. So banking sector will try to get it through by raising the interest rates, because the inflation expectation remain high. So in such a context, it is possible to have higher interest rates in near future. So in that context, it is very important that from one side you need to keep the financial sector stability, and on the other side you need to keep the macroeconomic stability, because we cannot think in very short within next say 1.5 years we cannot think of growth as such, because this is a situation of like 1970s supply side shock. That means the stag inflation. From one side you have the inflation, on the other side you have the economic contraction. Economic contraction is needed in this context to keep the economic stability, because without a contraction I don't think that it is possible, because this is the supply side shock, but you have to come the demand side measures to basically reduce the demand side from the demand side. In that respect, otherwise economic stability at risk. So without stability we cannot think the other other macroeconomic the indicators or the variable. So while banking sector stability is important and going ahead with that with necessary measures, it is also important to think about the macroeconomic stability from the broader perspective. So in that respect, very important to reduce the energy consumption in the short run to face this situation. True economic contraction will happen, but you have to allow the economic contraction to happen so as to keep the macroeconomic stability at first. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And finally, for this round, we will be moving on to Dr. Roshini. From a policy view, how do we manage this medium-term uncertainty? And what are the tough choices we have to make in this context? Dr. Roshini, it's over to you.
Thank you, Chaturika. So if I just summarize some of the risk related to the economic growth and the balance of payment issues and debt repayment, because some of the factors which we haven't talked about yet. So the first risk related to the macroeconomic impact, actually we need to think about the economic growth. That is the major risk, because the economic growth will be lower, as in the introduction, as Professor Premaratne clearly mentioned, that if the situation is severe, it might be like -2. So the 2%. So that is the major risk related to the macroeconomic impact and also the risk. So then the currency depreciation, that is another risk we have to face, because I mentioned that the currency depreciation, some might think that it is an opportunity. Yes, we can see some opportunities because of the currency depreciation. We can enhance the export competitiveness. But if we look at the Sri Lankan situation in this situation, like because we are recovering from the economic crisis after 2022-23 period, and then we had internal shock like this Ditwa. So in that case, we have to repay the loans, and also we have to increase the imports for the reconstruction after Ditwa. So in this context, if the currency is depreciation, that is not good for the economy. It is a major risk. And also we face, because of this currency depreciation, balance of payment issues and most of the other speakers talk about that. And debt repayment. So as I mentioned earlier in the first round, I mentioned that this Middle East situation, it creates risk on the fiscal burden in Sri Lankan government. And then because of this fiscal burden, actually the income will be lost and also the expenditure is going to be increased. With that, it creates some pressure on the debt. And also it will create some issues on the debt repayment, which we have to do. That is another risk we have to face. And people, most of the speakers were talking about the inflation situation. With related to that, if the inflation is high, then what will happen? The social welfare will be lower. Related, that is also another risk. Why? Because if the social welfare is decreasing, the government has to look after that, and social safety net and all those things will be increasing. So if I come to your question, and you mentioned that what is the most critical solutions we have to take. Actually, I think now in this situation, so if I divide the responsibility, how to face this situation, actually, for me, it is like government and also we as citizens, and also the independent bodies like central bank, they have different tasks and responsibilities. So citizens actually, they have to, as Professor Dunusingha mentioned, that we have to be very responsible consumers in terms of the energy. So that is their responsibility. And also we have to understand that which government is ruling the country is not a matter. This is a common problem. Therefore, we have to understand the situation and we have to respond like that. Responsible consumers. So that is one thing. And when we come to the government, actually, the role of the government is to manage the inflation. That is very critical because this inflation is created due to imported items like fuel. So then managing the inflation will be very critical and risky point. And also in the same time, government has to provide subsidies. Therefore, I think that is one of the critical point which government has to do. And also managing the inflation, exchange rate. So if the government, I know that now Sri Lankan economy is in a situation where we have restricted most of the imported items, even though we have recently released some items. So still we are following a very restrictive imports. So in that situation, to manage the demand for foreign currencies, to control the exchange rate will be very risky task for the government. And but anyhow, the government has to prioritize the essential imports, because otherwise the situation might be worse. And also now, after this economic crisis, the government is trying to provide all the social welfare facilities through Aswasama program. But if this fuel subsidy is coming, so then that is also a risky task for the government, because government expenditure is high and currency is depreciated. So in that case, to manage this social safety net cost will be a risky and a challenging thing. And also in the short run, actually, we have to assure the supply of oil so that the economic activities can be continued. It will be a very big task the government has to do. But I think the government is trying to do all these activities, but I think government needs to expand the capacity of the fuel storage. So those are the things that government need to do it. And when it comes to the central bank, actually central bank has to follow the monetary policy, tight monetary policy to control the inflation. But in the same time, if the economic growth is going to be lower, then the tight monetary policy is not suitable. So therefore, government has to think, the central bank has to think about the monetary policy adjustment, how the inflation can be controlled, and also the exchange rate management. Flexible exchange rate should be managed, and foreign reserves, we have to keep the exchange rate, and also we have to keep foreign exchange, because we are repaying the loan. We have to repay the loan. So therefore, that is also a risky task for the central bank, and managing external sector pressures like export earnings. So those are like not long-term solutions. So finally, the most important thing which I need to highlight here, the central bank's monetary policy should be aligned with the government fiscal policy. So that should be done in this situation to control or manage the situation. Thank you. Chaturika, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
So far, we have talked about the problems now and in the future. Now, for the most important part, round 3. What do we do about it? The question for everyone is, what policy measures should Sri Lanka take to protect itself from these global shocks? Here we need to think about 3 things. What should we do right now in the short term? What would be the long-term changes do we need to make? And are there any rules or institutions like central bank that need to change? Let's start with Mr. Chaucer.
Thank you, Chatrika, for the question in this final round. Professor Dunising and Dr. Roshini clearly mentioned, given the current situation, it's important for Sri Lanka to take both short-term action and long-term strategy to strengthen the economy. So if I come to your question, in the short term, the policymakers need to manage inflation caused by higher energy prices. Another thing, the keeping clear and market-based flow pricing system, is it important to reduce the uncertainty and maintain the stability? At the same time, support should be given the vulnerable household, especially those affected by higher transport and energy cost. Another thing, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has an important role in controlling inflation and keeping the price stable. So another thing, that with clear communication and strong policy action, it can prevent temporary prices increasing from becoming a long-term problems. And based on your question, in another scenario, in the medium and long-term strategy, so Sri Lanka needs to reduce the dependence on imported fuel. So one, the key step to increasing the investment in renewable energy, such as solar and wind power. Sri Lanka has strong potential in this area, and this can improve energy security in the long term. At the same time, improving the energy efficiency in transport, industry, electricity use can reduce the energy demand and strengthen the economy. So in addition to come to your point, the proper planning and good environmental management are important to make sure these projects are sustainable. So finally, in the Middle East war, in the global events, and globally every market will be struggle. So Sri Lanka quickly affect through the energy prices and inflation. To build a strong economic in Sri Lanka, need to develop more energy sources, especially in renewable energy, strong economic management to control the inflation, and better energy use to reduce the demand. So therefore, Sri Lanka must act early to build more stable and resilient economy for the future. So now we must take the right action at the right time to take the action. Thank you, Chatrika.
Thank you very much, sir. Moving on to Professor Dunusinghe. Sir, what should the central bank and commercial banks be doing right now to stay safe? And any institutional changes needed?
I'm not going to talk about what the central bank should do due to the conflicts that could arise. So that I will focus more only what the basically the banking sector do. As I earlier also mentioned, the banking sector should open up the window for facilitating debt restructuring with respect to the especially in businesses who face some difficulties at this moment. We have learned lessons from the 2022 crisis, and as a result of some of the measures the banking sector took, even today, small and medium scale firms or businesses complain. So they have number of grievances. So I think in that context it is high time for banking sector to basically negotiate and be open to negotiate with the affected parties and work around the possible solution at this moment. It is very important in that respect, and also we cannot expect in the context of business, but need to be more responsible in their behavior. In particular, this is beyond the control of the individual businesses. So in that respect, whatever the way that it could accommodate need to take that way, keeping their customer base also. So I think in that respect is very important to think about while adhering to the specific targets that are needed in for banking sector stability, while basically maintaining those specific status, such as the capital ratio and the liquidity and so on and so forth. Very important to basically pay attention to the businesses in this context, and in particular in the context of the broader sense, we are very much know very much that both remittances as well as the tourism are very much those two sources are very much vulnerable to the external and internal shock. The economic recovery, to a certain greater extent, the economic stability and also the economic recovery, we know largely due to the recovery of remittance and the recovery and the improvement in remittance as well as the tourism. We have highlighted these the vulnerabilities associated with these two sources of foreign exchange over the years, and in that context very important that in the long run, in the short run, to see the possibility of securing some loans from the multilateral donor agencies. I think very important to discuss with the leading multilateral donor agencies to fill any gaps that we could expect due to fall in remittance. We know that 50% of remittance come from the Middle East, 10% of exports to Middle East, and 30% decline in tourist, as also highlighted by Professor Suranga. And also the import bill, we know that it will go up by around 1.5 to 2 billion per year. So given those, we know that there will be really a shortfall with respect to foreign exchange. So how to fill that? We need to discuss with the donor agencies. Going back, if you focus on the long term, only way out is to develop a strong exporting sector. For that, as you know, that previous government introduced economic transformation bill in 2024 August. To date, we have not taken any steps in implementing that. Under that, you know that we had this Zone Sri Lanka, then the Invest Sri Lanka, then the Enterprise Sri Lanka, setting up a Office of International Trade and restructuring BOI, so on and so forth, plus some of the other reforms in the area of labor market, land market, and so on and so forth. Without economic reforms going ahead, we cannot expect the stronger exporting sector. So I mean, if we are to really focus for the future, the best thing is to embark on economic reforms, essential reforms to basically improve the business environment, thereby improving the attracting foreign direct investments, then improving female labor force participation, so on and so forth. I think this crisis also clearly tells us that the country should no longer depend on the tourism and the remittance, though can support, but we know history very well. 2 to 3 year times we have the external shock that affect those two sectors. While keeping them and improving them, we need to move forward with the stronger exporting sector. That is what the Sri Lanka should look at in years to come without further delay. Otherwise, we are very much vulnerable. We will end up with another debt restructuring, direct external debt restructuring, and the continuation with the IMF in years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Ravindra Kumaran, from your side, what policy changes are needed to protect our migrant workers and make remittances more reliable? And what should the government do in this situation?
Thank you very much. And I think, yeah, there is a, can I share this slide? Because, yeah, I can.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so actually, when you look at the government, not only the government and central bank, both need to be adopt some forward-looking and also resilience building policies across all three channels to minimize vulnerability and also strengthen economic stability. As clearly I mentioned here, so this is second, if I can go to the third one. Okay, look at the geopolitical channel. What kind of policy response? Definitely, I have already discussed in the second round. What are the opportunities available for the government? All these opportunities simply government can use as a policy response. Particularly, the one area need to be considered. I think many people already discussed how we can move our energy resources towards renewables, particularly solar power or wind power, and also look at LNG. Or these are the major area need to be considered, because rather than rely on one or two the resources, definitely we have to check whether in the future. But we know that crisis may be any time, internally or externally. So we have to be ready for any crisis in the future. So we have to check, particularly in the energy sector is one of the most important sector for the country development. Therefore, need to be consider more on that particular one. And second one, so we always made a mistake. We never we don't have any proper strategy to reserve the fuel. That's one of the issue we need to be considered. We have to check how we can reserve the fuel in order to happen any urgent or unexpected issues. So that's the second area need to be considered for government and also the institution. And other than that, I have clearly mentioned earlier, the export, the rate partnership need to be considered for other than the Middle East, because we know that when you look at this geopolitical channel, we have a very good relationship between Middle East country and Sri Lanka. The very high linkages, not only for the one area, there are many areas. If anything will happen, so look at now there are many wars happen in the world. Look at Russia and Ukraine. We didn't talk about this much of criticize, but now we know that why we discuss about this particular in the discussion, because we have more linkages between the Middle East and Sri Lanka. So therefore, each and every area need to be considered, particularly in terms of sources and in terms of reserves, and again look at the rate partnership. Other than that, we have to check. We cannot rely on one or two export item. I always think about how we can produce diversified product to export purpose, particularly. We know the economic complexity product is always a demand for the world market, but unfortunately Sri Lanka, we are highly relying on the basic product or the primary product. It is always very, demand is always very less. So therefore we need to think about how we can produce a diversified product in terms of increase more demand from the developed and other countries. Those are the area need to be considered in terms of the geopolitical channel. But when we prepare the long term and short term, I clearly mentioned here, develop a long term national energy security strategy. That's definitely we need to consider. I think government sector and also the policymakers need to be consider how we can look at this national energy security strategy in order to overcome similar kind of issue. And also look at need to be invest energy efficiency and public transport system, because public transport system is more suitable for the country like Sri Lanka. Therefore government need to be consider how we can do similar kind of, or we can encourage similar kind of strategy in Sri Lanka. And other than that, we need to be checked how we can go for the regional agreement. Not only in the nearby countries, we have to go for the far away and make some more agreement in order to overcome similar kind of issues. So therefore, we know that in terms of geopolitical channel, government and central bank need to be do more more work. And look at the second one is the labor migration. Particularly what we observe, the migration governance is a very important, and also protection is also one of the area need to be considered. So in terms of the policy response, what I clearly mentioned that the diversifying foreign employment markets. So that's one of the area need to be considered, because so far we have rely on certain region and certain countries to send our workers, but it's still we have opportunity. Look at a country like Japan or South Korea or Europe. We have to send our workers to bring some remittances. And also I have mentioned that the bilateral labor agreement is a very important, because a lot of our workers' protection is definitely we have to check how we can protect our workers. Therefore need to be continue some labor agreement. Other than that, because we have always sent our workers very low level skill, so that is another area need to be considered. How we can introduce skill development program for particularly in the global, get the global labor market. So that kind of strategy, that kind of policy response definitely important for country like Sri Lanka. And in order to prepare for labor migration, so look at some kind of comprehensive migration policy framework is necessary for Sri Lanka. So policymakers and government need to be check how we can establish a comprehensive migration policy in order to send the workers all over the world. And not only that, sometimes after similar kind of incident, workers returning the country, we need to check how we can take care of the returning. That is very important. So sometimes look at it now, many people are ready to return Sri Lanka because of this war. So we don't know what kind of policy available for government to take care of these workers. So need to think about how we can create reintegration program for them. That's a very important area need to be considered. And other than that, high skill migration, look at the low wage dependency. That's the end of the issue. So these are the major area need to be considered for government in terms of the labor migration channel. And when you move on the third one, the remittance channel. So that is also I have mentioned earlier, what are the opportunities available. Those opportunities now the easy for government to provide some policy responses, particularly encourage remittance to the formal banking channel, because we know that there are certain money without formal banking channel. We receive some from unauthorized channel. So we had to formalize all this money coming through the banking sector. And not only that, look at some branches and posts also additionally created by this remittance channel. And again, need to check how these diaspora bonds and foreign currency saving schemes need to be introduced, country like Sri Lanka. So we have a lot of opportunities. We have a lot of opportunities available, but still we don't know how to create or how to implement this particular strategy. And when we prepare for the remittance channel, so look at develop policies to channel remittance into investment. So particularly we know that most of the remittance we are using for the consumption purpose. So government need to think about how this remittance money can use for the investment purpose. Particularly, I think Professor Premaratne clearly mentioned this is SME or the housing sector entrepreneurship. We have to check how this money we can use in order to increase the investment opportunity for the country. And other than that, look at the diaspora engagement need to be considered. This is one of the major area now. Plenty of diaspora, they are happy to provide, some investment opportunity for the country. Government and policymakers definitely use this opportunity to invite all these foreign diaspora to invest whatever urgent need area. Definitely, it is one of the good opportunity for the government. So as a result, what I can say that in the Sri Lanka policy challenges, it's not just a response to shock, but to build long-term resilience by aligning energy security. That is the first area, and then migration governance and remittance management. The Sri Lanka can transform external vulnerability into sustainable economic opportunity. So everyone is expect this is one of the lesson we learn, but in the future or in the future, any external shock or internal shock happen, we have to be ready. We have to check what is the short term and long term policy responses may be possible, what kind of strategy we can implement to overcome similar kind of issue in the future. So thank you very much for providing this opportunity. I hope that it's a really very good opportunity for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to Professor Suranga. So, what kind of policy support does the tourism industry need right now to survive this uncertainty? And how do we build a strong tourism sector for the long term?
Thank you, Chatrika. Now, already time has gone right now. I would like to mention that one because you know that currently also 2025 we have got more than 23 million of tourists. But when you look at the average income, tourist arrival increased, but the tourism income decreased. Now, when we had a 2.31 million tourists in 2018, our foreign income was 4 billion. But 2025 we got 2.33 million tourists, but our foreign income is dollars in terms 3.7 billion. So therefore, it is very obvious fact that even though the number has increased, there is no guarantee for Sri Lanka tourism to increase the value. Volume is going up, but the income is going down. So we are facing, even though before this Middle East war is coming, how we can increase the tourist arrivals. But at the same time, we have to increase the tourism income. So under this scenario, we can say that we must think about diversification tourism product into the different market. As you know that Sri Lanka, though it is a small country, but we have to be smart enough to attract the right type of tourists to the right time in the right country's part. Now, example, Professor Ravindra Kumar said that very important thing. This is when you look at the Jaffna has been identified as the fastest growing destination in the world, one of the fastest growing destinations in the world. But unfortunately, we couldn't tap and utilize that potential as much we want to do. On the other hand, the diversification of tourism is not just thinking about the source market, but we should think about the how we can create the regional tourism development. So therefore, the resilience of tourism industry is not just numbers coming out of the country, coming from the out of the countries, but we have to ensure that there should be inclusive and sustainable tourism development. In that manner, as you know, that tourism industry is not just thinking about the economies of scales, but we have to think about the economies of scope. Variety of product we have to produce different customers. On the other hand, the tourism industry is seeking the partnership always, not like other industries. Now, when you look at the apparel industry, people don't think about who is produced, which the culture is belongs to these productions, and what kind of country situation. We don't bother about when you want to buy any shirts. But any tourists don't want to go anywhere if the country is not going to protect the tourist and providing the right kind of environmental services. So ecological balance and community well-being must be ensured. Now this is happening in the new kind of tourism development. So therefore the tourists are asking the not just lying on the beaches, but they are asking the experience, memorable experience, which could be generated sometime not from the 5-star hotel, but the homestays. So therefore my suggestion is policy is not just managing only the macro stability, but think about the micro and meso type of arrangement to ensure the inclusive and sustainable tourism development. In that manner, we can see about how we can create the resilient development of tourism industry for this kind of crisis. But we have been experiencing from since years. We have faced the recent past 5 kind of external shock. One is, that as I explained earlier, these are reason external shock. But tourist movement block, then there is no tourism, right? Therefore, movement is the most important. As being the island destination, the island is very important. So my suggestion is the policy must be integrated, inclusive. Policy must be integrated and inclusive. And same time, it should be not for a short run, but it should be long run policies must be developed. Now, actually, when you look at the tourism, global tourism, travel and tourism competitive index, we are right now in the 97 out of the 140 countries. But even therefore, we have to think about the holistic approach rather than not just looking at the war situations. If we look at the war situation, we can see the short run solutions, but I think long run solution must be the most important rather than short run. Therefore, there should be a certain macro level policy measures integrated not only the tourism industry. Now look at if tourists are coming 3 million by 2026, we expect 4 billion tourism income. But how do we generate the 4 billion tourism income is determined by how much leakage is going out of the country. Therefore, there should be a strong, very resilient agriculture sector and other service sectors as well. So therefore, my final policy is suggestion is we as a nation must understand the importance of tourism industry contributions for the nation development. Therefore, the nation branding also very important. In that case, I think that rather than using the very individualistic political benefited statement made by different kind of people, we should understand the gravity, density, and the seriousness of this issue, and we should face and we should try to find out the solutions as a nation, as a country, as a citizens. This is the final word I would like to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Roshini, we need to know about your suggestions and recommendations as well.
Thank you, Chaturika. As the time is running fast, so I will be very short. So in this globalized world, actually, all these activities happening in the world will affect definitely to the other countries, so we cannot avoid them. But my suggestion is we can face them. If we are having a good preparedness, we can face those kind of disruptions successfully. For that, I think we need to increase our capacity, and also we need to reduce the risk and uncertainty. So how can we reduce the risk we face due to these kind of tensions? We can reduce the risk by diversifying our income sources. Especially, we can enhance the export competitiveness, and we can look for many destination countries for our exports. And also, if we increase the local production and with to the maximum level. In that case, we can reduce the reliance or dependency on the migration and remittances. Actually, that will help for facing all these activities, and also that is really good for the welfare of the economy. And we can reduce the interdependency on the international trade and reduce the dependency on tourism if we increase our production level. So my final word is we can reduce the risk and uncertainty related to those things if we are like well prepared for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Finally, we will be moving on to Senior Professor S.P. Premaratne. Sir, for our SMEs and industries, what practical policy help will make the biggest difference to them on this ground?
Yeah, I also very short and very quick because like everybody said that now time is running out. But the last I want to say, look at the specifically SME sector and industries. Now, what we expected changes, basically, we have to rethink of energy source, because there's always trouble in the economy and the society, going more different renewable energies, because in Sri Lanka we have the government has to focus on maybe get rid of this kind of current energy source, the new energy source. And also maybe the SME sector as an industrial sector, we need to focus on private sector to innovative energy source looking at. And also the transportation and logistic channel also very have to look at. That is because Colombo and Trinco as a hub in the SME sector and industrial sector, there's so many work to do. And also another important thing about the sector, important dependency we have to get rid of. Kind of a local input, local innovative, because all we depend on SME sector and industries, even technology, even input, important. That's it. And also we have to think that sectors like more vulnerable and rich sectors to alternative sectors. For example, tourism, all the key right now, even the Professor Ranga talk about NT, but it's really the vulnerable, whatever happened, well, that hit the sector. So the energy also another, we have, like I mentioned, we have to go for alternative energy sources. Investment also very important, especially the education type of investment. More investment, we have to stream education and innovative culture we have to create. That is very important. Short-term, medium-term, long-term strategies required, I think, for industries and SME sector. So one of the things everybody talk about, the macroeconomic stability, very important SME sector, and cost relief support required the short term, temporary, maybe not the continuity dependency, but for example, duty leaves, waves, and this kind of thing. Financial sector support also, the central bank has to develop a new product, new way of thinking, like domestic debt structuring, Professor Dunasinghe mentioned clearly, and also trade already introduced single window system, but I don't know how it work, how practical. It's more look like a more conceptualized, not practical. So that kind of a fast track custom clearance. Now, for example, if you look at the custom clearance, it take on average about 65 days. So those things we have to. Medium terms has to change this, like energy transition, export diversification, value created export, and the alternative market we have to think of. And also SME sector had to identify leading sectors and the pump and the injectors support and give the solution. Sectorial development, like I mentioned, SMEs and industries had to shift the tourism, conventional tourism to new tourism, like Professor Ranga already explained. And agriculture sector is very important, processing, agriculture activities, and innovative thing. Innovation is the key thing. In the long run, had to look at the structural transformation. Energy dependency, we have to get rid of. Like we always depend on the conventional energy, new micro level, because the large scale energy project, I think due to capacity very difficult, but the micro level product, micro level solar product, for example, like I try to say, even the introduced 3-wheelers, different solar is the one of the thing. And the financial sector, I think the Professor Dhanusingha mentioned somewhere, but they specifically focus on the financial product in the sustainable and green financial framework. Central bank, I think this step to introduce the sustainable and green finance has to more focus on the financial and banking sector, this sustainable and green finance sector. And institutional regulation reform. Now, Sri Lankan government years and years always try to introduce kind of a regulation, new circulars that cost so much. Two ways. One is to deal with this regulation and the circulars. Other thing also, people use the subsidies. The subsidies more costlier than the current situation. Those things carefully policymakers has to think of, introduce the regulation and institutional development. For example, now QR code introduced. Many work. I went today, for example, my case, 2 petrol shed. They say different thing. My QR code did not work. So I created 2 teams. I mean, this kind of institutional support, we still don't use the digitalization, ITs properly, and that is also important. Overall, it's required external business environment clearance and the focus. So ultimately, the finally has to be our social protection strategy overall, development oriented rather than subsidized dependency oriented social protection. If the proper social protection system were there, this kind of a shock also, internal, external shock also, through the social protection mechanism may be handled. So unfortunately, we don't have a proper social protection system. We have a dependency social welfare system. So that is very important. With that, so I will wind up. I think the sessions also, this is looked like very good session, very valuable points came out. And I want to say, Chaturika, giving the nice questions each time. Thank you very much again. So thanks once again. Good night.
Thank you, sir. We have had a very fantastic discussion. I want to say a huge thank you to all our panelists once again. Professor Dhanusingha, Professor Suranga Silva, Dr. Ravindran Kumaran, Dr. Roshni Jayaveera, Senior Professor S.P. Premaratne, Mr. Joseph Francis, and also Mr. Chatula Nayanalochana. A special thanks also go to our Head of the Department Economics, Senior Professor Amithalingam, for encouraging us as always. And thank you to everyone who joined us online today. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.